How do the NFL draft futures odds break down here on FanDuel Sportsbook? And what are the best bets there? It's time to break it down right here, right now, as we get another edition and close another week of Locked On Fantasy Football.
Are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about the NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com. Check it out. We're getting you ready for free agency just around the corner, the NFL Combine as well. I have my top 50 free agents you can check out. The players most likely to be traded, including Aaron Rodgers, that's still on the table here for Green Bay post his darkness retreat. So all that analysis there. If you want to look at the Aaron Rodgers landing spots, what's best for fantasy, there's a show up on the archives for that from last week. So check it out. This week, it's time to close the shows of Locked On Fantasy Football. And we're going to focus on the draft today. And there's interesting odds up at FanDuel Sportsbook here for the futures and what they have available there. And we know FanDuel is an official sponsor here, our sportsbook sponsor of Locked On NFL Network and Locked On Fantasy Football. We have a lot of interesting things there, including the number one overall pick, the first quarterback off the board, the first wide receiver off the board, and the first defensive player off the board. So we're going to break down those odds and where these players stand and what that means here for the draft in terms of the teams picking and all that good stuff. So we'll break it down for you. We'll give you betting context, but also what it could mean for fantasy football based on the way things might play out in the first round. So we'll do that. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. We're free and available to you on all platforms. All right, let's dive right in. And the heavy favorite right now to be the number one overall pick is Alabama quarterback Bryce Young at minus 150. And this is independent of the Bears holding the number one pick. So there's a feeling that someone's going to trade up with Chicago to get Bryce Young. Or the other element in play is the Bears try to move Justin Fields and take Bryce Young straight up at number one without a trade. So, and the trade Fields is the more established commodity here to get draft picks. So there's two ways that you can look at it for Chicago, but clearly they're sitting on a very important pick here where they hold the cards. They decide what they want to do at quarterback. If they want to move on, they can do that. If they want to use that pick to stockpile, somebody's going to come up and jump to get that quarterback because everyone knows at number two, the Houston Texans need a quarterback with Davis Mills being their best option, need a replacement there, where Bears have two avenues that they can look at for their franchise quarterback. So however you look at it, Bryce Young is at minus 150. I'm not going to take those odds. It's too favorited there for Young. It's just not worth it. And if it plays up to chalk, it's just not exciting. So let's look beyond that. CJ Stroud at plus 400. Yeah, he could be the first quarterback off the board. So that's definitely intriguing when you get those odds inflated there in his favor with a much better payout. So he's right behind Young. And I think they've been neck and neck. And things could change here definitely in the pre-draft workout process through the combine measurements and interviews and the workouts on pro day that are coming up in early March. So things could change in a hurry here. Who's the top quarterback option? And then you might be able to pivot to Stroud here at plus 400. Now, behind Young and Stroud, you have Will Levis out of Kentucky plus 750, also staying in the SEC East. Anthony Richardson, this guy's moved up to plus 750. So he's in the conversation right up there with Will Levis there to be the third quarterback taken here. So with that, I think Stroud has the best value because I think he's the closest competitor to Young. There's quite a separation there between Young and Levis Richardson. Where they stand, you have Jalen Carter plus 750 as well, the defensive tackle out of Georgia. The Bears could go in that direction. They need defensive line help for sure, so they could straight up go there. But yeah, I'm not interested too much in Levis or Richardson or Carter there at plus 750. I think you get limited numbers with them. So looking overall, I think the best value is Will Anderson at plus 1,000 here for sure. Because when you look at Bryce Young, his teammate, being the favorite to minus 150, Stroud could move up to plus 400. But if you're going to look for someone who could spoil things, I mean, the Bears need linebacker help as well. They just really got gutted there. Robert Quinn is gone. Khalil Mack is gone. You had Roquan Smith also been traded as well. So that's a big void. The Bears are usually not this empty in linebacker. So when you look at that, Will Anderson plus 1,000, again, the quarterbacks cancel each other out. There's only going to be one when we think about that, right? That emerges as the top prospect. So is it going to be Young or Stroud? That's all we need to know. Then we can drop off with Levis or Richardson. With Carter versus Anderson, it's intriguing. It's not much of a difference there, plus 750, plus 1,000. But I think based on the needs and based on who is a bigger impact player at his particular position, I'd say it's an edge rusher who's versatile, can play inside as well, versus a defensive tackle that's very good, disruptive, but I don't know if I would venture to have a number one overall pick for Jalen Carter. So when you look at Will Anderson, I think he can live up to expectations. He's been the best player in college football when you look at the body of the work for the last few seasons here overall with his production. I know he dropped off a little bit. I think he was the best player for sure 2 years ago. So when you weigh all that, I think that's the value. Now, going a little bit deeper here, you got Tyree Wilson. He's an edge rusher from Texas Tech. He's at plus 5,000. So he's coming up the draft boards for sure because Myles Murphy, I don't think there's too big of a drop off between him and Anderson as a player, but he's at plus 7,500. I still think Anderson stands out. And then at plus 15,000, you've got Brian Bresee. He's an edge guy, tackles slash versatile player from Clemson. You have two offensive tackles too as well, Paris Johnson, Peter Skoronski. Now, offensive tackles has a pretty good history in going number one here, but I just think Skoronski and Johnson are seen as equal prospects and a little bit lower in the first round. So that's how you look at it here. I think, again, Young, you could go chalk on the favorite here, but Stroud is intriguing. Anderson's intriguing. I want to stay away from the plus 750. And if I'm going long shot, I might look at Myles Murphy because, again, there's a little bit of intrigue in him being potentially better than Anderson on the next level. So there you have it. We'll break down some of the other futures that we have. We have first quarterback drafted. That's kind of related to this one. And then wide receiver and defensive player as well. So we'll break those down for you in our next two segments here in Locked On Fantasy Football as we close a week of shows for you. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by Built Bar. Looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, and you got to try Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and then February is almost over here. Lent is here for many of you. I know the goal is to be a little healthier for everyone this year, and is also giving up things that we like, but we know we need to get better and get healthier. So that's where Built comes in. It's just the thing for you. Healthy is actually tasty with Built. Seriously, they're so delicious you won't think they're good for you. Perfect for your Year's resolution, for your Lenten decision, all that good stuff. What makes Built Bar so good? For starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. They come in unbelievable flavors such as churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. What's even better, they're healthy for you. They're only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar in most bars with a 17 grams for protein, a whopping number there. Now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, I've been telling you to go order your Built Bars at Built.com, but if you're craving them and needing them, you can just go to your local Walmart or Sam's Club to pick them up. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today. They've got 4-bar boxes there available in the pharmacy section. Cookies and cream, double chocolate, coconut puffs, some of the flavors available. If you're close to Sam's Club, you can then run in and grab a 13-bar box. That's a great deal. Hit flavors, of course, for you. Brownie batter. We mentioned churro, very delicious flavor. You can thank me later. Go check it out. Built Bars, get them at Built.com and now at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. Okay, it's time to look at more of these NFL draft futures there. These odds are according to FanDuel SportsBook, the official sportsbook in the NFL and of the Locked On Network here. All right, at quarterback, not a surprise here. You have Young with even more chalky odds here at minus 170. CJ Stroud tightens up to plus 200. Now, it would make sense to mix these, right? If you can and parlay them, is like if you have one indication on Stroud, this could be a big payout for you. go plus 400, plus 200 if he should emerge as the top quarterback over Young. So something to look at for sure there that you look at at quarterback. And we said look at twice, but that's something you examine there as a double bet for you. So Young and Stroud, again, this is going to be the battle, I think, for the top quarterback. Could end up being number one overall, depending on what the Bears do with that pick and what they do with Fields, and we'll have a better indication of that. But this is where you get those odds now. So maybe you want to monitor here more carefully with the quarterbacks as we go forward. Will Levis is at plus 600, so still edging Anthony Richardson at plus 650 there to be the first quarterback taken. So again, I think it comes down to Young and Stroud, but it's interesting that Richardson is so close to Levis now to be that third quarterback off the board. I think he's already got that buzz, and now the question is, maybe not Stroud versus Young. Is it Richardson versus Stroud developing as a question here as we go forward? I mean, Richardson has a very high ceiling. I think Stroud definitely does have that as well. He's got the production as well as Young, but Richardson, there's some untapped potential there that some people are looking at there at quarterback. So something to definitely examine should this rise continue. I mean, he's way off the board, way off the radar in terms of being in the conversation for either the number one pick or the first quarterback draft. And now he's in play reasonably for both. So he's a guy that could really boost his stock here over the next month with his work and workouts, because I think, again, scouts have a good idea about Young and Stroud. Levis is pretty much a pocket passer. Could just work on his accuracy and just try to clean things up mechanics-wise. But Richardson just has that massive ceiling with his size, strength, speed, upside there at quarterback. So, and it's a copycat league, so we see Jalen Hurts being very successful in a similar situation. So there's going to be that buzz. So I don't think that Levis Richardson thing is going to remain as an edge for all that much longer here in this draft board. Now, going beyond that, there's not a lot of players on the board. It really drops off from the plus 650 for Richardson to plus 6,000 for Tanner McKee out of Stanford. McKee was once in the conversation, maybe being a first-round pick. Some are higher than him than others, but I still don't think he's going to be in a conversation to be the top quarterback drafted. If Hendon Hooker had not gotten hurt late, I think you might have seen more buzz up there as another SEC quarterback. Interesting, you have Levis, Richardson, Hooker, all from the same SEC division, and you have the other side of Alabama. So a lot of SEC top quarterback play here. Hooker plus 7,500. Now, I just don't think he can make up enough ground even to get into the first round here, so let alone be the first quarterback taken. So Young versus Stroud is where I'm going to focus my attention here. And keep an eye on Richardson as he keeps rising, because that could be an interesting value bet as well. Now, Levis not too interested. He just doesn't have the buzz of those other guys, Young and Stroud being 1-2 in some combination, and Richardson being the rising prospect here heading into the combine. So sometimes you want to jump on these. Maybe you want to wait a little bit until the combine's over, see if they're adjusted a little bit, and maybe become a little bit more reasonable all around. Maybe you can also get better value on Young then as well, if other people are being bandied about as the number one overall pick or the first quarterback taken. So a lot of things to consider, but definitely you want to maybe wait and see approach on this, where I think it's not bad taking a flyer, say, on Stroud or Anderson right now at minus 150 or plus 1,000 there with number one overall pick. All right, so there's a look at that. We still have to look at the wide receiver and defensive player odds there to be the first one selected. We'll do that in our final segment here on Locked On Fantasy Football. Now, there's an exciting new game that I have to tell you about, and if you haven't gotten in on it, it's time to do so, because this is the best way to get in. It's Ultimate Football GM. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. You've heard me talk about this mobile game app, and I can't tell you how much fun I had competing against my fellow Locked On host. Chris Carter, Locked On Steelers, was fantastic, and he was our Locked On NFL champion. Now, we have a league for you to check out on the Locked On network that you can challenge other Locked On listeners. We'll tell you about how you can compete a little bit later. Ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing a football franchise? Well, your dream can come true, and this game is definitely for you. You'll manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through season, lead your team to glory, trying to build a dynasty. With Ultimate Football GM, you're responsible for controlling the destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, trading players, navigating your franchise through free agency, the draft, and all the ups and downs of a regular season. So a lot of excitement there, and you can enjoy all of this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline. You can play on the go, as you want and when you want to. There's a Locked On League created just for you to compete against Locked On fans all over the world. Going to be the ultimate Locked On football GM. Choose the Locked On all caps league in the app to join. Can you create a football dynasty? Put yourself to the test there with Ultimate GM. Locked On Fantasy Football listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using promo code Locked On in the game store. That's all caps, Locked On in all caps. So make sure to check it out today inside the game. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, it is time to close the show here on Locked On Fantasy Football. We're going to look at the last few set of futures here. You got the wide receiver, first one drafted. Interesting that the choice is Quentin Johnson, but no minus here. It's plus 150. You got Jordan Addison at plus 200. I'm really feeling with Addison being the number one there, so I like him at plus 200 here. Quentin Johnson out of TCU made a lot of big plays, but I think he's a field-stretching outside guy. I think Addison is more a complete receiver right now out of Pitt, out of USC. I think he's the first guy that is probably going to get a lot of attention, but it's going to be pretty close. You see the Texans being in play potentially for either one of these guys with their second pick. Some of these defensive players and quarterbacks are going to go first here. So it's wide open here. And interesting that Jackson Smith and Njigba behind both of them is at plus 470. So he's right there with Jalen Hyatt, who's got a lot of buzz. He was the go-to guy for Hooker downfield for Tennessee, and he's getting some more love to be a potential back-end first-round pick here. But they're plus 470, so it's quite a bit of drop-off. Johnson and Addison are pretty close here. I would lean towards Addison at plus 200. And again, I think you have Smith-Njigba could also be in the mix at plus 470. I don't see Jalen Hyatt rising that far there. Smith-Njigba has a better body of work here that we look at overall. And Addison has been outstanding. He won the Blitnikoff Award in Pittsburgh and then moved over to USC. We had a big year with Caleb Williams. So that's someone to look. And Max Duggan as well with things with plus 150 really helping Quentin Johnson's value as well. So I'm looking at Johnson Addison. I think Smith-Njigba has a little bit more value than Hyatt there, plus 470, but I'm circling Addison at plus 200 as somewhere to go. All right, elsewhere at wide receiver, Zay Flowers has gotten some intrigue. He's at plus 850. And finally writing it out are Kayshon Boutte and Josh Downs plus 5,000. Now, I think Boutte and Downs more late first round, early second round picks. Flowers a little bit inflated here. So there's not much to see here with wanting either of these guys at that value, because when you look at it overall, I think it's still leaning towards Johnson or Addison or Smith-Njigba off the number one wide receiver list here. Now, plus 470, interesting for Smith-Njigba, but Addison less volatile, I think. Smith-Njigba coming off that injury there at the end of the Ohio State season, that hurts a little bit. Johnson did play a long season and was productive, had the biggest showcase there in the college football championship and playoffs there to help his value. But I think Addison, again, is the better overall that I would have wanted to invest in earlier in this draft. Now, finally, defensive player, there's not a lot here. Jalen Carter minus 105. We do like Will Anderson here at plus 125. Carter is a great talent. He's disruptive and everything, but it's really about what do the Bears do? What did the next team looking for guy does? And you look at the Arizona Cardinals, Jalen Carter would have a lot of appeal for them early. So really comes down to the Bears. If they take Will Anderson, they are going to help a lot of people here. Plus 125 for him, Jalen Carter minus 105. So I think Carter is the best defensive player in this draft overall. But for the specific needs of the Bears, I think Anderson comes a little bit more. But Carter, definitely for the Cardinals. I mean, look at it. Zach Allen's a free agent. You have J.J. Watt into retirement. So it makes a lot of sense to go after a disruptive defensive guy there for Jonathan Gannon in the draft, especially after Gannon was on the Eagles team there that drafted fellow Georgia Bulldogs tackle Jordan Davis in the 2022 draft. Now, going a little bit deeper, it's interesting that, again, Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech is at plus 650 ahead of Myles Murphy. Again, pretty considerably at plus 650 versus plus 2,000. So a little bit bigger of a gap between Wilson and Murphy here. But again, Murphy has a little bit of intrigue, but watch out for Wilson. He's a riser there that we want to watch, kind of like Richardson is offense with quarterback. They're quickly going up the boards here. We also want to examine that for one Tyree Wilson. So this could be a big few weeks here as we get through the combine and draft. But if you're going to invest early, I think Anderson, not a bad flyer right now, as well as Stroud. So that's we pull out, as well as Addison at wide receiver. Those are the futures that we're looking at now. But again, I would try to wait a little bit to see, get a little bit more clarity on who's picking where, some trades going down, and then you can feel a little bit better about these odds. Now they might change, but you also might feel a little bit more confident of where you can find some value and win here with those bets. So intriguing for sure to look at those futures odds. The draft betting is very interesting in itself here, but then you really have to dig deep to see where you can get some value and just throw something that you have out there with a chance for a bigger payout. So that's what you're looking for essentially with those type of bets here in the draft time. And there's still plenty of time before the draft, so just be a little patient, but grab some of the futures that make sense and hedge them a little bit later with some things you're thinking about. So thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen day and every day. We're free and available to all platforms. This closes another week. We'll break things down again for you on Monday as we keep looking towards free agency and the draft here through all the NFL offseason. So we're in advanced scouting mode. We don't stop breaking down fantasy football. We have different perspectives. Again, I cover the NFL as well for sporting news. So we've got you covered on all the biggest stories here of the 2023 offseason. For Locked On Fantasy Football for Friday, have a great weekend. Enjoy those draft odds, and we'll catch you on Monday.